Good evening, everyone. Hey, can we settle down? It's time to get started. We've hit the 7 o'clock mark on the second Tuesday of the month in a brand new year. Show of hands for everybody that thought they would live to see 2024. That's not very many. I don't know about you guys, but man, the whole Cold War thing made me doubt it. But all right, we're going to start out. Don't forget, you need to check in. I don't care if you sign the sign-in sheet. If you can, please do check in electronically. If you receive the email about the club meeting, the reminder, there's a link there. Click on that. It's going to ask you for a code. The code is Bravo 3. That's what you type in. That'll register your attendance. And it's really important that we do this officially. We are a 501c3 corporation with the state of Texas. We have bylaws. We have a constitution that detail eligible voting requirements and the whole bit. So in order for all of us, all of the work that we do here during these meetings to be official and to be legal, we need to know who's attended. All right, I'm hitting buttons and nothing's happening. That's better. We've already covered that. So let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, guys, or folks. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so it's that time of the meeting. We want to welcome any guests that we may have, and right now it's time to embarrass any guests. Do we have any guests in the room that are non-members? Can we get your name?
Wayne, and I'm Kilo Mike 6 Tango.
Okay, we have Wayne here with us, Kilo Mike 6 Tango. And didn't you give a presentation to us not too long ago? Yeah, the presentation over loops. Thank you. Any other guests in the room? Anybody get any new call signs? Any upgrades? Any new licensees? This is getting boring. You guys.
Everyone's an expert.
Yeah, I don't think they are. So you're going to have to step it up. So, sir. Don't worry, David. You're going to get a chance to talk here in a slide. I've since I didn't get a VE report from you, I put your name down to update us all. That explains why I didn't get a report. Okay, so January 21st is our next VE session. It's going to be 2 p.m. at the Heard Museum. Great, 2 p.m., January 21st. Not just for club members, anybody. So if you know people that want to test, send them our way. David keeps them up, keeps the schedule updated on the ARRL VEC site. So that's the place to find out details if you can't remember what I just said. All right, so we got our VE report. Thank you, David. How about a repeater update? Ron, are you on the Zoom call? You'll never guess what time it is. It's field day time.
Nothing better than the thought of field day to keep you warm on a cold winter night, right? And it's not a contest. That's right. Hey, field day is only 6 months away. We got to get ready. It's time to get ready. And we've already taken our first step. I have reserved the Hilltop Pavilion, the preferred pavilion at Irwin Park. So it's in the bag. We've got it. Got in there before anybody else could. You can reserve them up to 6 months. I did it on January 2nd. I was a couple weeks late, but anyway. However, and the good thing is it's reserved, but up to 2 weeks before we could get our money back if we want to do something else, which brings me to my second point. I've had a couple of requests from folks of thinking of another location that would be a little more amicable to RV camping. Right now, Irwin Park, you can tent camp, no RVs allowed, period. So there've been a couple of suggestions, maybe a state park or an alternate location that allows camping, may have some facilities or something like that. I just want to throw it out there tonight just to kind of get the thoughts up. If that's something that you're interested in, if you have a suggestion for a location, they both have their pluses and minuses. Irwin Park is right here in McKinney, and we are the McKinney Amateur Radio Club. State parks are a little further away. Bottom is probably the closest one, 45 minutes away. Ray Roberts about 45 minutes away. Eisenhower about an hour away. And it also, we're not the only club. Some other clubs may be doing that too. But think about that. Put it in your thought. Like I said, we're 6 months away, but we need to hammer some things down. If that's what you're interested in, I know had to look, June 22nd, somebody's going to want some air conditioning. As you did last year. Larry didn't. He was good. But Billy went to lay down in the bed of his truck. But anyway, so anything like that. And right now is also the time to start thinking if we need any new equipment, anything that you saw that we need to replace for last year, or any suggestions, things like that, something that could enhance the operations. Speaking of last year, though, just a refresher on our score. We had 817 contacts. We operated at 100 watts. That's the class that they put us in. This number is the number that really gets me. We had 64 people participate. 64 people that came out, did something, hung out, ate, cooked, operated, put up towers, took down towers, or just got out of the car, said it's too damn hot, signed the log, and went back home. But that's 64 people. And if you look at that page, this is on the December QST, page 73. And if you look at most of the clubs, they've got 5, 10, maybe 20. There's a few on page 73. There was 5 other clubs that had 64 or more on that whole page. And there must be 100 some odd clubs on that page. And there's like pages of it. And that included some of this. I saw a station that was an 18A station. That means they technically have 18 transmitters capable of transmitting at the same time. And they had 24 people, 24 participants. So if they were all capable of transmitting at the same time, somebody's butt was in that chair the whole time. And you got to get up and go take care of things somewhere in there. That's the beauty of our club is we got great participation. Just look around tonight. That's what really made me happy. Our total score was 34-48. So just a reminder, this weekend, when you're cold, just think Hilltop Pavilion, June 22nd, 110 degrees, and hydrate. Exactly. Hydrate. All right. There is one thing coming up, though. It's called Winterfield Day. Now, this is the last weekend of January. It's not an ARRL or a club sponsored event. It just happens to come up. I went out last year as I went up to Irwin Park because I was watching the weather and it looked like the weather was going to be nice that Saturday. So I went up there and it was in the 50s, got in the 40s in the later afternoon. Very similar to Summerfield Day. They're a little more oriented towards MCOM, getting out and deploying in the wintertime, more than that. So they look at that a little more. All modes are available except FT8 and FT4. They'll do JSA call, they'll do RIDI, things like that for digital modes. They say FT8, FT4, you can't pass an emergency message with that. So that's the difference between them. And so that's what they want you to practice. www.winterfieldday.org is their website. There's a few folks that talked about maybe going out and doing Winterfield Day. If you're interested, get with me after the meeting. I don't know if I can go Saturday. I think the wife has planned up my Saturday, but I may be interested in doing something Sunday. And it's going to depend on the weather. If it's 32 degrees, no. But I'll stay at home. But if it's 5 degrees, if it's like it's going to be this weekend, but we'll see. But that's coming up. It was a fun thing for me. It's not as quite as hectic as Summerfield Day. I was able to get out and make some good contacts last year. So an FYI. Looking forward to it. That's right. And it's not a contest. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate all of your work. All right, I'm going to announce this one more time, and then this slide will no longer be in the deck. But don't forget, we are publishing our meetings nowadays on YouTube. Go there if you want to catch up. The Christmas meeting, first I watched, since I wasn't able to be at the Christmas meeting, I watched the YouTube. First 20 minutes was awesome. The rest, not so much, but whatever. You can pick what you want to watch, but it's awesome to be able to have this opportunity to be able to catch up on things that you might have missed. Also, the Discord server has been getting busier and busier. I've been seeing lots of great conversations. Take the opportunity, join up. If you don't want to hear it, don't load the app. It's up to you. I mean, this is nobody's forcing information on you. It's not going to show up in your email inbox. It is 100% up to you whether you want to participate in the discussions on Discord. So take advantage. I personally, I think they're both great tools for us to use as a club to stay in touch and to be able to do more things together without actually having to be in the same room together. All right, everybody, let's get resettled. That sounds bad. Sit down, be quiet. That's what I want to say. No, it's working. You're just not hearing.
Okay.
Smile, Ron. That was meant as a joke. All right. I know you guys are thrilled with hearing the melodic sound of my voice, and I'm the lucky guy that gets to do your presentation tonight, too. So you're going to get to hear some more of me. So our presentation tonight, I had promised about a year and a half ago when I did the presentation about W5 RBO, Ray Stone, who was a longtime ham operator up in Allen, who died back in March of 2022. I did a presentation about him and his what I was able to find about his ham radio career. And I'd promised I would give a follow-up once I was able to finish analyzing all of the data that I was going to be able to get from Ray's estate. And so this is that presentation. And also I promised that as part of this, I would give some insight into paper QSLing for those that still would like to do that. Because personally, I like that tactile feel of a paper QSL card. So that's what we're going to see next. And unfortunately, I didn't share that screen with Zoom. So pardon me just a moment. There we go. So my presentation last time was about Raymond Stone, W5 RBO, and his 30-plus year career as a ham radio operator from 1954 through the early 1980s. So we're going to do a follow-up on this. There's going to be some review. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all this, but he started in 1954 or 55. No, it was 50. First licensed in 1950 at the age of 14. Had the lovely pleasure of back in the day when you got your novice license, you got a special call that designated you as a novice. Had an N as the second letter. So he was WN1GZH. The joy of all of that is that once you upgraded out of that, they just did away with the N and you got to keep everything else, which was both good and bad. It made QSL cards very, very difficult because what would wind up happening is they didn't want to have new QSL cards printed. So you'd get a card from them. They would have just crossed out the N. makes it hard when you're trying to go look at things historically. But he started out in Cranston, Rhode Island. I got pictures of as many of his different versions of QSL cards as I could. As you can see here, there's 7 of them. One of them is a very, very temporary one at the very bottom. You probably can't see it very well in the back, but basically what that is that was kind of an exceedingly blank card that he used when he was doing county hunting, but not as a hunter, but as a huntee. And he would rove around the country and give people contacts in different counties. And by having this relatively blank card, he could just write in whatever county he happened to be in without having to have anything pre-printed. So that's the point of that really plain looking card down on the bottom. I spoke with Ray's family a little bit after the last presentation. And I asked him about the whole county hunting aspect because Ray, I saw a lot of some letters, comments that were handwritten on some of the QSL cards he had received, et cetera, that gave me an indication that Ray had made some very, very significant efforts with regards to county hunting as being a target. And what Ray's son told me was that he remembered that every family vacation that they took, Ray would have an HF radio in the car. And this is in the tube days, guys. So this is not, this is not having an ICOM 706 or something like that. This is a substantial piece of iron he has in the car. And he said he remembered that, they took a driving trip from Texas and they were going to go to the ARRL National Convention in Seattle. So they're driving from Texas to Seattle in the 1960s, maybe 70s. So they're doing that. And he said he remembered they were in Oregon and his dad got to talking with a gentleman who really, really was desperate for a contact for a particular county in Idaho. So Ray, being the conscientious ham that he is, said, I can do that. So he took his whole family about 2.5 hours east to that county in Idaho, gave that guy a contact, and then started on his way back to Seattle. This is before the days of GPS, folks. He had to calculate that route on his own, or maybe he made one of his kids do it. I don't know. But either way, this is not a matter of just letting Waze refigure where you're going. So this is the kind of ham that Ray was. I mean, it's been very entertaining reading through all the comments and talking with his family. Okay, so for those online, the question was, he kept his wife and was never divorced. I don't know. I never heard anybody mention their mom. Or Rhode Island, but yeah. Just a quick review. Ray's QSL cards were really neat in that they included what type of hardware he was running at his station. So I took his earliest QSL card and it said he had a homebrew 6V6 oscillator with 7 watts input. That was when he was a novice in Cranston, Rhode Island. That's a pretty generic description. So I went out and I did some major Googling, and these are the best pictures I can find of what a typical 6V6 transmitter might have looked like. So you see, it's pretty simple, not a lot of components, built on a piece of wood. Everything's wide open. And I don't know, but in my imagination, I got to believe that's probably how Ray started. 14-year-old kid, this is what he could afford. This is what he did. And believe it or not, for his receiver, this is pretty high end. He had a Hallicrafters XX25. You look at that picture on the bottom right, man, that was a hot receiver back in the day. There was some money there. I'm guessing his parents probably helped him with that. The transmitter, he was on his own. He moved to Irving, Texas in the late 1960s, about 66 or 67, from what I can tell by the QSL card information. And he appears to have upgraded between his novice years, because now he's got a Hallicrafters HT32 transmitter. He's got a kilowatt amplifier from Hallicrafters, and he's running a Collins 75A4 receiver. Nobody could have wished for much more than that back in those days. So that's a pretty nice looking setup. I think, heck, I got my first license in 78. I'd have been thrilled for that. From what I can tell, it looks like about 1970 or 71, he bought some property and he moved to Anna, Texas. Now, I don't know what his station looked like when he first moved there, but what I did was I took the last card that I could find from him that detailed his station and just inventoried the stuff that he listed on his card that he had. It's pretty significant. He had a couple of transmitters. He had a Kenwood TS820, a nice hybrid transmitter, with a 6146 finals, and the rest of it being solid state. Had his Collins 32 S3A. That was the best picture I could find of one of the Collins radios. His receivers, he had a Kenwood RA20, which I think was part of the twins that Kenwood made. They had the two gold-colored twins. I think that was the receiver portion of the twins. He had a Collins 75A4 receiver and a Collins 75 S3B receiver that would mate with his Collins transmitter. The really, really impressive part of his station was his antennas. He had a 10 element, 10 meter Yagi at 80 feet. An 8 element, 15 meter Yagi at 90 feet. A 6 element, 20 meter Yagi at 100 feet. A 4 element, 40 meter quad at 85 feet. And he had a 157 foot vertical that he ran on 160 and 80 meters both. His QSL card also mentioned that he had a mere 6 beverage receiving antennas installed on his property, ranging anywhere from 540 feet to 3,600 feet in length. This guy understood the importance of antennas, something we can all take a lesson from. And you'll see when I start going over his QSL information, how important this was. His QSL card, indicated that he had a kilowatt that he was running, but he didn't mention, the make or model of amplifier. So I'm just going to assume he was still running that Hallicrafters amp from when he moved to Irving. Okay, so from his QSL stats, last time I gave this presentation, I had 2 big boxes of QSL cards. For those that are on, the Zoom meeting, I just made a hand gesture for how big the boxes were. You'll have to assume that it was really big. But we 2 really big boxes of QSL cards, and I had keyed all of those into AC log and ran some stats. Since then, the family was able to get me a partial collection of some of Ray's log books. So I have his log books that are running from 1967 through about 74, and then they pick up again about 1978 and run through late 1979. So I went through and I keyed in or matched if it was a QSL that had already been on one of the cards that I had put in, but all of that data has been entered into the system and correlated. Duplicates have been removed, and these are the numbers as they came out. So over just this fraction of Ray's ham radio career, he did golly, I'm sorry, I think I've got the wrong presentation, but It's over 11,000 QSLs. Hang on a second. I got to get you guys to the right one because this is just too good to miss. I'm sorry about that. I thought for sure I had the right prezo. Unfortunately, I'm showing you the old one. Been doing too many presentations lately. There's the right one. It's the right one. All right. So the flow was supposed to be what's changed since I gave this presentation in 2022? What's changed is I got all his logbooks or quite a number of his logbooks. Got it all entered in, removed the duplicates, got some more QSL cards from what I had in my hands when I gave the last presentation. I just took a picture of one of the pages of his logbooks, I think from 1967. For those that haven't seen the format of logbooks and everything and the information that the FCC required back then, this was required by law, guys. This was not optional. And one of the things that was super interesting about Ray is he was meticulous about his logbooks. If he called CQ and nobody answered, he recorded it in his logbook. Basically, if he pressed the transmit key, it was in his logs. It's pretty intense. Now back to on the air. There are 11,282 QSOs I was able to get documented in the system. And one of the things that I noticed about all of these QSOs is the vast majority of them were ones that he initiated. He rarely was responding to somebody else's CQ. Usually when he was interacting, I saw 10, 20, 30 minutes in between QSOs. So he was thoughtful, but also rather prolific in the number of his contacts. So you see 11,282, I gave the distribution by band. 20 meters was absolutely his top band for number of contacts. Followed very closely by 10 meters. So clearly the solar cycles were in his favor for the years of the logbooks that I had in my hands. What I also noticed, he had a pretty even distribution between phone and CW, almost 50-50. I will say that, you can kind of get a feel like on 40 meters, almost everything, about 2/3 of what he did was on CW. Only 1/3 was on phone. On 20 meters, it was pretty evenly split. 15, almost everything was CW. He had maybe 20% that was on phone. So he was definitely definitely balanced in his approach, but he seemed to have preferences by band and where in which mode he liked to work. Now, the 2 meter and 70 centimeter stuff, the numbers are really, really low. Personally, I know he did a lot of QSOs on 2 meters and 70 centimeters, but I think a lot of them were on FM, and I don't think anybody actually logged those things. They just did it. So, but that's kind of where we are. So the logbooks that I have, I've got 1967, 1968, 76, 77, and 78. Those were all the years of logbooks I received. RIDI only. Because there really weren't any other digital modes at that time. Okay, so some interesting stats. He worked 277 total countries based on these cards. There were actually more than that, but unfortunately, a significant number of the countries that he worked don't exist anymore and don't count for DXCC credit. So, East Germany made hundreds of contacts in East Germany, but that now counts as just Germany. So, lots of things like that. Islands on the air, 171 total. Prefixes. This was the big number I thought that was super cool. 1,034 prefixes he worked. That is a stunning number, and that's probably the most telling number for just how far and wide he was talking rather than country totals or anything. Top countries, U.S. is at the top, but frankly, after like 19, after the late 60s, he didn't work hardly anything domestic, at least not that was in the logbooks. After, all of his 1970s work was 99% DX. So when you're looking at those 11,000 QSLs, just bear in mind, only about 30% of them were in the US. The rest were DX. So it's pretty prolific and, for DX, I think from a percentage perspective. Japan was huge for him. Seemed like every other QSL card I was looking at was a Japan contact. Got West Germany. I mentioned East Germany. I got the 46, but frankly, I think I know that's way off because the logging program doesn't recognize, what is it? The German Democratic Republic is what it was called back then. Doesn't recognize that. So I think it kept changing it back to just Germany. New Zealand, European Russia, again, that's a today term. Frankly, if we were to take all of the different Russian countries or Soviet bloc countries that he made contact with, it would probably be over 1,000 between all of the Serbian, Yugoslavs, Czechs, Lithuanians, all of these fun places that were part of the SSR that no longer, that are now either independent or don't exist anymore. But yeah, you can see, lots of stuff. I presented this last time. I think it's worth showing again. This gives an idea. He was really good at keeping track of what he did. He's got lots of great awards: 5-band DX Century, 5-band worked all states, 5-band worked all continents, 160 meters worked all continents, 160 meters worked all states, 80 meters worked all continents, CQDX SSB, CQCW, CQDX-CW Award, CQ worked all zones, and the Quarter Century Wireless Association are the only ones I can find so far, but there's probably more that we will never know. Some of this is reruns, but I just think this is just cool. I just wanted to, I loved some of these interesting QSL cards. This N0BHO at the top right. You can't see it right there, but basically he's standing on a county line between two counties in Texas. So for those of you that may wonder why some counties in Texas are hard to get QSL cards from, that's why. Because that's the damn county. But, he had a lot of contacts in the canal zone. Modern logging programs don't recognize the canal zone as its own DX entity, but it is, or was. And so anything that was KZ5 was the canal zone. Kind of makes sense, canal zone. So yeah, he had a lot of that. He got to talk to, he has a QSL card from the Reverend Marshall D. Moran from Nepal. One of those really hard to get to countries, especially now that China's kind of clamped down on them. all of this kind of leads me to the follow-on conversation about these paper QSL cards. I mean, you've been seeing pictures of them. I've been trying to, pepper into the presentation. Why do we want to do this? Why would you want to do a paper QSL card today? It's a lot of work. I mean, electronic QSLs are pretty cool, man. They're quick. They're free. They integrate with your logging program. I mean, you just press a button and it's done. It's instantaneous matching to the QSO, so you can get confirmations in minutes rather than waiting for potentially many years. And it's all automated for awards credits. Electronic sounds like the bee's knees, right? Problem is, the data belongs to someone else once you put it up there. What if EQSL runs out of money and they can't maintain their servers and their storage anymore? What's going to happen to all those QSLs you matched on EQSL? I don't know. Because of that whole, they're ephemeral in nature is the way I look at the electronic QSLs. They're there today and they're there for as long as we hope we need them, but maybe not as long as we want them to be. Requires the internet. What say you're up on a mountaintop? That's not going to be so easy to get to. What say? I don't know if anybody's been watching movies on the streaming yet, but whole movie out there about what happens when the internet gets co-opted and dies. Without the internet, the electronic QSLing becomes pointless. You got to have a computer or a telephone to be able to do anything with it. And frankly, a lot of those really rare DX stations, they don't have the internet and they probably won't electronically QSL because they just can't. So I think paper QSLs offer something. There's drawbacks to it. Number one, they can only move as fast as the Postal Service moves. And we all know that seems to be getting slower every day. It's relatively expensive. I mean, if you're going to spend the cost, for domestic QSLs, you'll spend the cost of a postcard, which what is that, like 50 cents now? Just to get a QSL to somebody that may or may not respond. Worse still, this is a DX entity, you're sending it direct, that's a minimum of $1.45 to get a postcard internationally. And then you got to hope that the station on the other end responds. Sometimes it gets pretty complicated. Foreign postage can be kind of a mess to deal with. A lot of DX stations know that they're DX. And the reason why they know is because everybody wants their card, but they don't have the money to send cards to you. So they're going to expect you to help fund that if you absolutely got to have it. So how do you get them the money? What currency do they get? Do you just give them postage? Okay, what's foreign postage look like? There's a lot of complication to this paper QSLing. So it kind of feeds into why people love electronic QSLing. And then better still, there's the whole poor response rate thing. So you've invested all this time and money in getting a card to the person you want the card from. You may have even provided return postage. There's nothing to force them to send you a card. They may not. And there's nothing you can do about it. So it's a pretty non-deterministic system. However, there's some great benefits to it. Number one, it's relatively permanent. As long as you can keep that card physically intact, it's real. You can use it for awards. Even if they create a brand new stinking award, you can use that card, no matter how old it is. The card and the information belongs to you. Somebody else can't lose it for you. Only you can lose it for you. There's no technology required to look at them other than if you're like me and need glasses, but they're there. I also like this bit. It's educational. You learn about different countries because, people put all kinds of interesting little information on their cards. They'll handwrite notes on them. It's pretty cool sometimes. You get to learn about the different currencies, especially as you're trying to work your way through postage and everything. For those of you that don't do business internationally, this is a big damn deal trying to figure out how currency exchanges and everything work. Postal systems, every postal system is a little different. You get to learn about local governments. Some local governments don't allow money to be transferred through the mail. So if you send money through the mail, you could be breaking a law. You need to learn about that. And then I don't know, this is both a pro and a con, but QSLs will continue to arrive sometimes 10 or more years after you've held the QSO. It's a con because it's taken so darn long to get the card, but man, it's really cool because you get this neat surprise. Shows up in the mailbox. That rocks, you know? But this is, just through some cursory thinking of me, this is the pros and the cons between the two different types of QSLing. So should you decide that paper QSLing is interesting to you, you want that tactile approach, you're okay with the lack of timeliness and perhaps the lack of response, you want to make sure you build a QSL card that the person on the other end is going to be able to easily consume and respond to. So there's some key information that needs to be on every QSL card for people to be able to really, really validate that the QSO can, actually exists. Number one, you need the call signs, both stations involved, date, band, frequency, the operating mode. Operating mode, don't get too darn specific. If you sit here and say, oh, it's FT8 or PSK 31 or whatever, if you're doing slow scan and you're picking the mode, don't worry about that because that really doesn't matter for confirming a QSO. High level, SSB, digital, CW. That's really about the only three that matter. You can say RIDI if you want. That seems to matter to some folks, but just don't overthink it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Time. Make sure that when you do the time, you use GMT/UTC/ whatever you want to call it today, but basically it needs to be a universal time constant because one of the hardest things I had dealing with all these QSL cards and logbooks up until about 1971, very few hams were using GMT or UTC. They were using their local time. I don't know how anybody ever figured out whether a QSO actually occurred. It was really, really cool when I started noticing cards and the logbook entries actually starting to match up. But even then, I would find that folks would get confused. I would have the people in Japan would show on their card and say, okay, this is the right UTC time. So they'd have the UTC time that everybody would expect, but they would show the next day. So the date didn't match up. So everything was offset by 24 hours. So there's all of this funness around this deal. So UTC, use it. Signal report, and if you're expecting a return QSL, make sure that if there's any special instructions you have for the person sending it to you, give a short note about it on your card. There's other optional information that's useful, but not absolutely required. County, because there's a lot of people that hunt United States counties. Even DX stations love to county hunt. Your ITU zone. We don't, personally, I don't see a lot of people paying attention to that, but there are a lot of awards out there for working particular numbers of ITU zones or in a particular region, that type of thing. So including that might be useful. CQ zone, CQ magazine has a lot of contests and they've created their own zoning system that's different from everybody else's. So you need to pay attention to what the CQ zone is. Let's say you're involved in other type of organizational type of contests. The SMERC group, that's a 6 meters group. They have their own special numbers. You join SMERC, you get a membership number, and people can get awards for speaking with X number of SMRC members. And the way they prove that is by having QSL cards with different SMRC numbers. Same with the 1010 international guys. You'll find on 10 meters as the bands open up, you're going to get out there. You're going to be talking to people. You're going to be expecting to get QSL cards. You're going to find lots of folks on 10 meters won't talk with you unless you have a 1010 number. They're very arrogant about it. So I recommend you get a 1010 number. And there's a plethora of other smaller membership-based groups that run contests that you need some kind of number you might want to include on your card just to help for that. And then, as you saw, I got lots of great information off of Ray's cards about his station construction. Other people are really, really interested in what the folks they're talking with are running and everything. A lot of times, if you're in a contest or whatnot, you don't have time to actually have that conversation. So maybe you include that on your card. What type of equipment do you have? What antennas do you have? Pets names, kids names, take your pick. Just put it on there. They can ignore it if they want. But it's up to you what you think is important to you. Okay, the other thing about a good QSL card, you got to clearly communicate the minimum information, at least. Penmanship, that was probably the hardest damn thing I had with going through all of these cards and logbooks. The penmanship was absolutely atrocious on some of these. I couldn't tell, was it a 7? Was it a 9? What, a 3 or an 8? You just couldn't tell. Also, I found a lot of the cards were written with ink that over the years started to evaporate. And I couldn't even read it because it looked like a blank card. Make sure you're using a good quality permanent ink. Whether you're printing it or whether you're handwriting it, make sure it's going to last. Dates. Dates are probably the hardest thing I ran into on all of these cards, because there's a number of different ways of representing dates. Here in the US, we like to go month, month, day, day, either a 2-digit year or maybe a 4-digit year. Internationally, most people go month, month, day, day, years. Some will go different still. The number of date formats that were out there were maddening to me when I was trying to match up all these QSL cards to logbook entries and everything. So my recommendation is make sure it's very, very clear. I actually took an example from a former club member, George Hewling. This is a card that he wrote long ago. I believe this was from the 1960s, maybe 70s. No, in 1982. There it is. But he did it really cool. He did the day, spelled out the month, and then the year. And better still, if you notice in the box underneath where it says date, he even spells out up there that, hey, it's date, month, year, just so you know. Be clear. The dates are hard. Use 24-hour time notation. Don't mess around with this AM, PM stuff. Just go, 0 through 24. Also, it's exceptionally important when you're doing paper cards that all of that minimum QSO information is on one side of the card. Don't make somebody have to look at two sides of the card to figure out all of the information you need. I saw many, many cards where they put the call sign on the front. And if I flipped it over to go get all the QSO information, the call sign of the owner of the card wasn't on the other side. So I would have to flip back over to try to find out where the card came from again. Very, very annoying when you're trying to collate all of these things for awards and that kind of stuff. So these are just some examples that Ray had. He clearly got it. You notice each one of these 3 cards, all of the information I mentioned on the front. Don't have to flip it over. I didn't take pictures of the back of these, but if you flipped them over, they're basically set up as a postcard. So you can put a stamp on it And then you got a whole half of it that's blank for putting in whatever note you might want to send. And then the other half, you can write the address for who you're sending it to. This is George again from long ago. Again, just some examples. I'm going to say this is what not to do. Just from looking at this, can anybody tell me what the call sign is? No? He actually has two call signs on this card that you know you aren't sure which one is real. But all right, so the sending call sign, top left, he has handwritten a 0 in over the 9, but it's W0TIP there. However, if you look at the top right on the kite that's flying, it says W9TIP. So I don't know which one's real. Yeah, but I'm not going to go through all this and drain the slide, but you get the point. It's all over the map. Very difficult. And then the things that he did handwrite are almost illegible. It's cute. He did. Here's another one. What's call sign? Anybody? Okay, so what's that O and the funky E for? Anybody know? I don't know. But yeah, you're right. It's SK4BX. What's the call sign? You sure that's an H? Because every other character is uppercase, but the H seems to be lowercase. Is that really an H, or is it some Cyrillic symbol that we don't know? Okay, so what's the call sign? No, only one of them sent this card. Ah, there you go. You got it, but easy to find. If you had a stack of them like this and were trying to type them into a computer, would this be convenient? Okay, what's the call sign? Okay, the font is number one. The font is horrible for readability. It's very pretty, but very difficult to read. But I believe that's OZ1CRL, and that's the way I entered it in the system. All right, so there's multiple ways to send paper cards. Paper cards are interesting. You can do postal. You can do all kinds of different ways of doing it. However, when you're doing DX and you need to be sending QSL cards internationally, it's very expensive to do it via the postal service. It's very cost effective to use the outgoing QSL service from the ARRL. It's a pretty cool service. I've used it myself. Basically, you bundle up the cards that you need to get sent out. I'm not going to go through all the details about how you have to organize them, but they do ask you to organize them by country. And, you got to include some information like, some proof of your membership, that type of stuff, because, this is only available to ARRL members. But if you send them $1.50, they will ship 1 ounce, which is approximately 10 QSL cards. They will ship 1 ounce of QSL cards anywhere in the world. It's an awesome way to go. Oh, I'm sorry, I lied. That was $2, but it's $3 for 11 to 20 cards. And if you got more than that, it's 75 cents an ounce to send cards. And they will get it there. However, they don't send cards via direct mail either. They batch them up, and maybe once a quarter, they send them to their corresponding amateur radio organization in the country that you're sending it to. And that amateur radio organization will take them and sort them out and send them out to their members. So it's not exactly quick, but you know what? It's inexpensive and it's relatively reliable. ARRL outgoing bureau will only take DX cards. You cannot send domestic cards this way. So domestic cards, you're stuck with the Postal Service. If you're doing paper QSL cards, pay particular attention. Either the station that you're working with will tell you, or you can find it on QRZ, or you can find it in other databases that they have designated that they have a QSL manager. What that means is that this is a DX station that gets tons and tons of requests for QSL cards, and there's no way on earth they have the time or the money to provide all of the QSL cards to the people they communicate with. So a volunteer somewhere in the world has taken on the duty of ensuring that their QSL cards get responded to. Well, the way that usually works is the DX station will send their logs to their QSL managers periodically, whether that be once a quarter, once a day, once a year, I don't know. But they'll send it to their QSL manager, and the QSL manager is the one that's receiving all of the QSL cards from people that have contacted the DX station, and they will go through and match them up to the logs and then generate an outgoing QSL to go back to the person that's requesting the card. So if they have a QSL manager, do not send the card to the DX station. Send it to their QSL manager, whether you use the outgoing QSL bureau or whether you use direct mail. Questions on that? I know it gets complicated. There's a lot of moving parts to this. Sir.
The country requires a fee to respond.
They do not.
Okay, so
That's part of the general agreement amongst all of the different amateur radio associations around the world is they don't do that. Yeah. Yeah. Now they may charge their members something. We don't know, but they aren't charging us. Oh, by the way, this is a picture of the outgoing bureau at the ARRL in Connecticut. Okay, direct QSLs. This is the fun part. Let's say you want to send a direct QSL to a DX station that's located in Timbuktu. Number one, you got to figure out how to address it. Addressing international mail is far from intuitive. So spend some time on the internet, look it up, figure it out. Beyond that, postage internationally is in and of itself kind of a unique thing. Here in the US, we have it pretty lucky. I believe it's like $1.45 that the post office will charge you to send a postcard or a single envelope that weighs no more than 1 ounce anywhere in the world. $1.45. Remember that. That's great for getting the QSL card to the DX station. 9 times out of 10, the DX station really doesn't give a darn that they got your card because they got 1 billion of them from people here in the US. What you care about is the DX station going to send it back to you? More often than not, DX stations, especially rare ones, they're tired of sending QSL cards to all of us Americans. So you're going to have to pay for their cost to send you a card. That's where it gets super interesting because some countries it's illegal to send money through the mail. I don't know which countries they are. I think it changes from month to month. But that's the thing to think about. Now, the other, another way, sending self-addressed stamp envelopes. Self-addressed stamp envelopes are awesome here domestically. You do that, you probably got about a 30 or 40% chance of getting a return QSL. Then there are people like me who just, for some reason, I don't send them too much anymore. But I really mean to. But regardless, internationally, self-addressed stamp envelopes becomes a whole new deal because we don't have postage for every country. There is a mechanism for international postage that's called an international reply coupon or an IRC. IRCs are still utilized today in most countries in the world, and each IRC is supposed to be the equivalent of 1 unit of international postage. Unfortunately, a lot of post offices in foreign countries require 2, 3, or 4 IRCs to get an email, to get a letter to the United States. So If you know how many IRCs it takes, which may require a little research, you can, should you choose, enclose an appropriate number of IRCs when you send your QSL card to the DX station or the DX station's QSL manager to be able to receive your return card. Here's the catch. Used to be you could buy IRCs at the United States Post Office. Starting in 2013, the US Post Office has quit selling IRCs. So I did some research in preparing for this presentation. I found out that the Swiss Postal Service has a website where Americans can go ahead and get on there and via PayPal be able to buy IRCs from the Swiss Postal Service that they will then mail to you. I don't know. I still think it's fun. The complication is part of its charm. Okay, so the other thing that you need to be aware of is some DX stations, if you want a paper QSL card, are gonna require what they call green stamps. It's a euphemism for send me money. The question is how much? Rarely will they tell you how much because that smacks of doing business over the airwaves, right? So they just say green stamps. Used to be back when I first started doing this, $2 was pretty common. Reading I've done over the last couple of weeks, it's $5 now. Okay, so the problem with that is, as I said, some countries it's illegal to send cash through the mail. Better still, if you send cash through the mail, some countries it doesn't get there. So the recommendation is if you're sending QSL cards internationally and you're including green stamps, by the way, for those online, I'm making air quotes, and you're sending green stamps, use an envelope, put the card in the envelope, put a piece of paper around it, make sure the money is not visible. Make sure on that envelope that there is no indication that you or the receiving person is an amateur radio operator. Because there are folks smart enough to know that, hey, ham operators send green stamps and the money will disappear. So my recommendations and guidance, just be careful. Thought I'd give you some coolness about receiving QSLs via the Bureau. Because guess what? They can send, DX stations can send QSLs to you via the QSL Bureau. But there's a whole separate organization within the ARRL that does incoming QSLs. They are organized by call area. So for those that pay attention, we've got 10 different call areas here in the United States, right? 0 through 9. We all have that in our call signs. Well, each call area has its own incoming bureau. Each incoming bureau operates just a little bit differently than the other. So depending on what your call sign is, should you have some vanity call sign that says, hey, I have a K0 call? Well, guess what? Your incoming QSL bureau is probably in Ohio. No, I'm sorry, South Dakota, I think, is where the incoming QSL bureau for the zeros are. But regardless, you will get your incoming bureau QSLs through the bureau that matches the area of your call sign, regardless of where you live. Go to the ARRL website, look up incoming QSL bureau. There will be links to each of the different incoming bureaus that will tell you what the rules, costs, everything are to be able to get your QSL cards from the Bureau. Because what happens, these QSL cards come into the ARRL in great big boxes like this every month or quarter or whatever. They get sorted out, sent to all the different area bureaus. The area bureau then sorts it out and sends it out to the different regional folks that are sorting the cards down to people like us. So here in Texas, the K5 Bureau, or the W5 Bureau, excuse me, is in Oklahoma. But there are about 10 or 12 different regional groups that take care of sections of the Area 5 call signs. But the way that it works here in Area 5, they've got it pretty well simplified. If you want to be able to get them to send cards to you when they come in via this mechanism, you just need to go to their website. They got a PayPal link. You go in there, you send them money. They will then put that money aside to pay for postage and envelopes and everything to be able to send you cards when cards come in for you in the Bureau. What they do is they wait until you have 5 to 10 cards in the bin. Once you get 5 to 10, they'll stuff it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and send it to you. You're done. I have received cards via the Bureau that have taken 10 years to get to me. So don't think it moves fast, but it's really exciting when it shows up in the mail. Let's see here. Just make sure that, if you are doing paper QSLing, spend the time, look up how that remote station wants to QSL with you. And follow the instructions. I mean, because especially DX stations, they're inundated with requests. And so it's best, you will not get a response if you don't follow what they say. The ARRL website actually has some really great resources. And I really recommend that you look at the incoming Bureau pages, because that is a really, really painless way. To be honest, those of you that have made DX contacts in the last few years may already have cards sitting at the incoming Bureau, and you don't even know it and won't know it until you give them some money to send it to you. So don't lose out on that. Now, no, each area Bureau has its own rules. Some of them will keep them 6 months, some will keep them 6 years, but eventually they're going to go in the round file if you don't send them some money, because they don't have the room to keep them forever. But I recommend just keeping. It's trivial, $5, man. Send them $5 just in case. You never know. There may be that DX card that you would kill for, just sitting there, and you don't even know it's there waiting on you. Yes, Brand. You absolutely can. That is, well, at least in the 5 Bureau, you can. You can't in some of the others. I went to all 10 of them today, and 5 is pretty unique in that regard. Well, there's, if you type in just in the search window, say incoming QSL Bureau, it'll pull up a page for it, and it'll have links to all 10 of the different bureaus. And you can go there and look and see what the rules are, depending on which area your call sign may happen to be in. And that's it. I know I went pretty long tonight, and you've heard a lot from me. Hey, Mike.
PSC?
Please. Yeah, that's a CW abbreviation. That's frankly, CW I found to be not all that difficult with regard to the dots and dashes. What was difficult was all the frickin' abbreviations they used that didn't seem to make sense. I mean, like the whole DE thing. What the heck? It is. It's a little bit of a different language. I mean, letters and words are cool and fine, and I get those, but all the others. Yes, Brand. Correct. It was for amateur radio. Correct. If anybody is interested, I have an example of a call book, of a log book up here. Also, if you recall, I mentioned, all of these great web resources to be able to find out how to QSL with folks, what address, who the QSL manager is and everything. I have some examples of some magazines that people used to have to subscribe to be able to find some of this rapidly changing information out. So feel free to come up, take a look at them. They're from the 60s, and it's pretty interesting stuff to see what everybody had to do to be able to be an actual DXCC award winner. It was a big deal. It was a lot of work. And it absolutely was expensive. Like, I looked at what Ray had to do. I mean, I had a lot of his organizational notes for what he had to do to get all of those rewards. Holy moly, that guy must have spent hour upon hour upon hour sorting through QSL cards, organizing them, making sure they were grouped properly so that the QSL checker because there are only particular people that are authorized to certify that your QSL cards are valid for awards. Yeah, it's a deal. But yeah, good comments. Anything else? All right, thanks guys for listening to me all night. I know I've been going on and on, but all right, if there's no further business for the club, can I get a motion to adjourn? There's a billion of them here. I've bored everyone to death. Let's do Jerry. Okay, and second, I'm going to do Steve Ullman in the back. Sir. Yes, thank you. By the way, I finally got to talk with the manager of Spring Creek. They love having us here. Let's keep it that way. The red bucket is for tips. Make sure we take care of the people that take care of us. This is a great spot to meet. We don't want to lose it. Okay, so all in favor of adjourning? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all.